All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. That's the talk line number. You want to get your legal questions answered, call in. We'll do them here on the air, 540-0580. Whatever you want to talk about, healthcare law and what's going to happen with the Supreme Court. Of course, we're still monitoring that. It looks like the Supreme Court may side with Arizona against the federal government on immigration issues. So lots of good stuff coming out there still. We'll keep our eyes on it, and as soon as the news breaks, we'll keep you updated. Of course, when it does break, I will put it on my Facebook page and probably also provide some commentary there. So if you haven't had a chance, check me out on Facebook.com under Carl with a K, Rominger. And if you want to talk here on the show, 540-0580. Andrew, you're on the air.
Hi, Carl. How are you?
Good.
Hey, Carl, I just had a question about library fines and statute of limitations.
Yeah.
My wife, I guess a few weeks ago, first of all, she hasn't been to the library in probably 8, 9, 10 years. Never got a notice or anything like that. I only remember her having a library card, but she got a notice from a collection agency, basically about some overdue library fines. We did call the library and found out that supposedly it's valid. But my question is, if this is from like 10 years ago, do they have any legal way to collect it?
Oh, see, now that's a good question, and I don't know. Well, here's my question. Had they levied the fine, or was this the first time they took action on it?
Well, we never heard about this fine until we all of a sudden got this notice from a collection agency.
Right.
The library never sent us anything. We moved a few times over the years, so I don't know.
An actual fine is not subject to a statute of limitations, okay?
Okay.
But the cause of action that creates the fine is. So, for instance, if you get a traffic ticket and you get fined $75 and you don't pay it, you always owe it.
Okay.
On the other hand, if they write you a traffic ticket 2 years and 1 day past the date of the event, it's outside the statute of limitations, then you can never owe anything because no fine can be imposed. Okay? Now, there's one other little rub in here. You might have a collateral attack. If you could show, and I'll give you an example. Let's say I claim to have found you guilty of library theft and fined you, but then we later on find out you were never actually served notice of it.
Yeah, which that would be the case. She hasn't even been to the library in over 7 years.
We have to be careful about what notice is, because notice might have been, at the time your book was out, what your address was on your library card.
Yeah.
But that's another question. But in other words, there's a couple different ways to attack it. But if a fine was actually imposed, now the next question is, how much of a fine are we talking about?
About $75.
$75, right.
Supposedly for 3 books, which we have no recollection of.
Right. Were they good books? Do you still have them?
Well, she doesn't even remember having a library card.
Okay.
So we're not even sure it's even a valid debt, to be honest with you.
Right. And it's from a collections company, but then the library backs it up.
Yeah, well, we did submit say, please verify. We sent them a certified letter saying, please verify the validity of this debt, and then we're just waiting to hear back from them, basically.
Okay, well, if they verify it, have some proof of it, my advice would be it's probably cheaper to pay it than it is to fight it. Unfortunately, that seems to be the scam these days, right? These townships and cities send out all these tickets to people for small amounts of money, and it's more expensive to fight it and prove you weren't parked in Philadelphia than it is to simply send them the money they want.
Is a library fine an actual criminal fine, or is that like a civil debt? Or?
There is a summary action for library fines, yeah. And I think it can even rise to a misdemeanor if you take enough books.
Okay, so it's not like a business debt, like I owe an XYZ company money, so it's an actual governmental
Well, that's
fine.
the question. If it was an actual fine, okay. Now, that's an interesting question. If it was an actual fine under the statute, then it's no statute of limitations at that point after you're fined. On the other hand, if it's just a civil action, i.e. the library says, hey, you owe us some back, it's like the Blockbuster would tell you back in the day that you owe some late fees.
Yeah.
Well, that's a breach of contract action, and they need to sue you and reduce it.
Yeah, that's where the statute of limitations would
come in. And it could come in for a library, too, if they didn't cite you.
which we never got anything. We never got anything. It's just, we only remember having a card, so it's
right. Well, so, I know a lawyer that spends a lot of time in the library. Maybe they can weigh in and let me know.
Okay.
All right, my friend.
Thank you.
540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Walter.
Carl.
Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Good.
Hey, I like your show.
Thank you very much.
I like when Bob gets you on. Hey, listen, my question has to do with Admiralty Maritime Law.
Okay.
Okay? When you go through law school, you're familiar with what I'm talking about?
Well, sure, it's the law of the sea.
Yeah, when you go through law school, are you guys schooled in that?
The short answer is it's referenced and talked about, and there's a class you can take, but it's an elective. So, no, the short answer is most lawyers do not come out of law school with any expertise in maritime law.
Okay.
And it's its own set of rules. It's also quasi-international law, right? Because it straddles the law of many nations. So there's sometimes just some different interpretations. That's actually come up with the Somali pirates.
Right.
Different countries allow for different levels of engagement by ships under their flag, for instance. And even though pirate engagement is technically maritime law, each country has its own version of what can and can't be done to the pirates.
Okay. Well, another question would be, like, when you go into court, now I have no actionable anything legal going on against me, but I'm doing some research on this. I like to listen to talk radio quite a bit, and apparently there's some things you can do when you go into court.
I think I know where you're going with this, and I'll tell you what I know, which is basically there's a theory out there that somehow you can invoke maritime law or as a defense that the court doesn't have jurisdiction on land, or that there's fringes on the flag, and that's a admiralty. None of that is really true. Now, I don't want to get somebody calling me up going, oh, it's absolutely true, and if you just invoke the secret, you'd win. And actually amongst the lawyers and the judges, there's kind of a chuckle about that. The one we hear about now is the UCC. Everybody says they're creating themselves as a sovereign under the UCC so that they're not subject to any laws, and they have websites that tell you to send stuff to judges, invoking your right under the UCC and registering yourself as a sovereign. And it's really all hocus pocus. It reminds me of the guys. He used to tell you could send stuff in the mail legally by putting 1-cent stamps on it. Well, the answer is yes. There'll be postage due on the other side, but when you do it intentionally, it's a crime. So there's a lot of bad information out there on that.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard things about, like, if they don't spell your name correctly on whatever it is, the charge that you get, you can, if you don't pass the bar and go on in front of the judge there, they have no jurisdiction over you.
Well, that's always the interesting question, isn't it? Do they mean you or not? So if they spell Carl with a C and I show up, I've sort of admitted that I'm pretty sure it's me, even though there's a defect in the spelling, right?
Right.
On the other hand, is it really material and it can be corrected at any time? But the interesting question is what happens if they reduce the thing to judgment eventually, and then they come to execute the judgment and you say, that's not me, then you're going to get into a secondary fight on whether that really applies to you or not. This actually comes up in the real world from time to time when people's wrong name is placed in a judgment. Mm-hmm. Basically, what I can tell from a very sketchy look at the law is that it suggests that if we can easily ascertain who you really met, okay, then probably the court's going to correct that. It doesn't necessarily create a jurisdictional issue, particularly if the person, as you pointed out, showed up. See what I mean?
Yeah.
And if they didn't show up, then there's a whole other question of notice. We may have to start from scratch. Now, come back to this technicality thing for a second. Courts will not entertain technicalities in most cases where something serious is going to happen, like a murderer go free, let's say.
Okay.
On the other hand, when it's a minor matter like a traffic ticket or even like a simple assault, a lot of courts will entertain technical defects quite handily as ways of disposing of cases that really aren't critical, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I always joke, if they spelled your name wrong or get the wrong date in the citation and it's a minor matter, it's a great defense to raise, because sometimes it's the only defense you have, and some judges will grant it just because, it's an easy way to let somebody off the hook, right?
Right, yeah.
And be merciful without having to say that you bent the law, because you didn't. On the other hand, if you want to try to throw out a murder charge because they've got the date of birth of the defendant wrong on the charging documents, good luck.
But not that so much as, I guess what I was saying is, whether it's uppercase or lowercase spelling of your name.
Yeah, I got to go to break here.
Okay.
All right, my friend. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Carl.
Little side note here. I don't know if you guys are following this, but it should be with great interest. We now have a Chinese dissident under U.S. protection, and he's sought asylum with us, and we're providing him with asylum. And I think Washington Post is calling it a pivotal moment for U.S. role in Chinese human rights. That's kind of a big deal, so pay attention to that, because obviously, as our number one creditor, our relationship with them is very important. Of course, as their number one customer, we have a little leg up too. But I do think that's very interesting that we would do that, because traditionally we've tried to nudge China along on the human rights issue, but not force it, so to speak. So it's a pretty bold move by the U.S. 540-0580. Adam, you're on the air. Hey, Adam.
Hello. Hey,
Yeah.
Carl. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, I have a question about speeding fines, say, in another state. I know you were going into statute of limitations earlier, and that there is none in Pennsylvania. In Virginia, would there be?
I don't know the answer. What I mean by that is, again, like we have a statute of limitations on traffic offenses here in Pennsylvania, but once the fine's imposed, theoretically, the government can bring them back. Virginia, it's going to be Virginia law, and no idea.
Okay.
Wish I had a better answer for you. What I would tell you to do is search around on Google. Unfortunately, you just never know the accuracy of the answers you're getting there.
I imagine I'm not the only person that would owe the state of Virginia money, considering this is going back about 15 years. The speeding fine was almost $400.
Yeah. I got pulled over in Virginia this past fall, and they tell me I was going 15 miles over or 16 miles over, and he told me that's a major traffic offense in Virginia.
Right.
But he was going to gladly write me up for, X over or whatever, which would just be a couple $100 fine kind of deal. So magically, I paid attention coming back through that area a couple days later. It was a bunch of local police policing the highway.
Right.
And I got the impression that this was the town's chief source of finance.
Taxation by citation, you don't say.
Yeah, well, you know what? And let's just talk about that for a second. All you sheeple out there, they want you to speed. They want you to get DUIs. And they say, no, the government doesn't want it. They're trying to stop it. Really? I guarantee you, I mark my words on this. Let's just stop all. I told a guy this the other day, so let's work this out on the air here. Everybody in Pennsylvania needs not to commit a crime for 1 week. I mean, let's just go with traffic crimes. I know we're not going to get the drug addicts to stop doing drugs. We're not going to get the thieves to stop stealing. So let's just concentrate on one that we could all participate in, right? If every Pennsylvanian simply didn't speed for 1 week and didn't get a DUI for 1 week, you would crash the entire financial system of the counties and the courts. Because they need you to do it. And it's just like the old cigarette money, right? They don't really want you to stop smoking because it will crash the financial system.
Well, I heard quite a few years ago that the state police actually started giving out a lot more warnings because they were forcing them to put out tickets at such a rate. They finally said, okay, well, most of us are just going to go out and give warnings. I'm sure that really hurt their pocketbooks.
Yeah, and that can. And I do know from talking to some state police officers historically that, guys who write up too many warnings or too many, 3111s or other lighter things suddenly find that they're getting a talking to, So now they're not allowed to have quotas. So the thing that came out a few years ago was a memo from the state police that said that underperformers on ticketing should not be given PennDOT duty, which is when they sit at the car with the lights blaring, at the beginning of a construction site.
Right.
That pays overtime, time and a half to the troopers. So there's nobody there on regular hours. There's kind of the plum assignment that you can sign up for or get. And obviously it's real easy because you sit there and read a book while your lights flash.
Right.
And or iPad these days, I'm sure. But my point on it is, so the memo had come out basically saying, okay, we don't have ticket quotas, but if you want to get bonus overtime, you got to be one of the top performers.
Yeah, so they took the stick out, but they were still dangling the carrot.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you very much, Carl.
All right, my friend. 540-0580. Jerry, you're on the air. Hey, Jerry. Jerry. I think we lost Jerry. Oh, well. 540-0580. Call back, Jerry, if you need to. Vincent, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a question regarding the personal effects of a parent when they die.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know if there's any laws in the state of Pennsylvania that govern what happens to the personal effects of the parent if there are, say, two siblings.
Well, theoretically, they belong to the estate. And so if there's two parents and one parent dies, they go to the other parent generally because it'd be marital property.
What if both parents are dead?
When the second parent dies, the executor or administrator of that parent's estate would take control of those personal effects and then distribute them either in according with the will or according to what they would like to see it done.
Will, if there was not a
then
will,
somebody needs to be appointed. Well, if the siblings can't work it out, then somebody needs to be appointed as administrator at the courthouse to handle that.
Okay.
Make sense?
I have a second question.
Yeah.
Now, let's say the one sibling and the parent lived in the home, and the other sibling did not.
Mm-hmm.
But the other sibling came into the home and took all the personal effects, plus maybe took some personal property from the other sibling.
Mm-hmm.
What can be done about that?
Well, taking the property of the other sibling is theft. And that can be reported to the police. As for taking property that belongs to the estate, if the administrator of the estate ultimately decides that property belongs to the estate, then they can surcharge or go after and bring on behalf of the estate a replevin action of that other heir, which would be to get the items back, basically. Fancy way of saying that.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about, a scrapbook or something, while it has great sentimental value, it has very little actual financial value.
Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about antiques and stuff that one sibling who didn't live at the home came into the home and took away while the other sibling was, say, out doing a job or something,
right,
or being at work during
right,
the time that he was at work.
Yeah, so, absolutely. So somebody needs to open an estate and make a claim.
Okay.
If it's worth, if we're talking about thousands of dollars worth of stuff, it's worth it. If we're talking about $800 worth of stuff, it may not be worth it.
No, it's thousands of dollars worth of stuff.
Okay.
I'm just trying to find out as far as what happens. And I don't even know who the administrator of the estate is. We really never got that far.
Right. Well, if there's no administrator yet, then the court would appoint one, but a natural heir would be the person who would apply. And then if other people who could serve won't renounce, we say, then the court would determine who to pick.
Okay. Is the fact that you're the oldest sibling matter at all?
No.
Okay.
Nope. All right, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck.
Bye.
540-0580. John, you're on the air. Hey, John.
Yeah. Yeah, this John was. I have a landlord-tenant complaint.
Yeah, go ahead.
I went to the district justice and I won it to a judgment, and they gave me a judgment. She appealed it, and now I got to file a complaint with the common pleas court.
Right. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
So you have to redo the complaint and file it with the common pleas court. Absolutely.
Okay. How come it's Can an individual do it? I mean, it looked pretty complicated to me. She said I just couldn't, there's no form I can use. It's just,
that's right. You have to draft it from scratch. I mean, anybody could do it, but the answer is, now, how much money are we talking about here?
Yeah, about a little over 1,000.
Yeah. So, the answer is you can certainly hire a lawyer to do it. It's going to run into any costs or ability to collect it. Is this tenant going to have money to pay, you think?
Well, see, that's what she said, that she wanted to stay, but I had to, let her go because certain circumstances. Right. Anyway, how much did she have to put up at when she filed that appeal?
Did she appeal it herself, or did she go through a legal service agency?
No, I think she just appealed herself. Well, some county agency helped her, but it wasn't a lawyer, I don't think.
Well, that's the problem. If a county agency helped her, then she probably didn't have to post the rent. If she did it herself or through a private lawyer, she would have had to post the rent. So if she posted the rent, then you're in good shape because all you got to do is win and you get your money.
Okay.
But if not, then, you can use a lawyer. My only concern is, you're going to run into legal costs that are probably going to start approaching what's owed to you at some point.
How do I know? Don't I have the right to know she posted rent money up front or not?
Yeah, you can absolutely just look at the docket and see how much she paid in.
Well, I'm looking at the paperwork here and it says nothing about any money.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at the docket at the courtdahouse.
Oh, They have to show it to me then?
Yeah, it's a public record. It'll be on a computer there.
Oh, okay. Can I ask you one?
Shoot fast.
And this original thing at the district judge, I don't know if it's going to cause a problem. I had said she could pay and stay, right?
Right.
And I told the judge I don't want to pay and stay because she had called the police and made some crazy accusation, right? That wouldn't come if we had to go to court after everything. That wouldn't come into question, would it?
Right.
Would that come into question, whether she could stay there? Is there any reason why she could stay there? I mean, I'm trying to figure out.
Well, during the pendency of the appeal, she can stay there as long as she continues to pay into the court, I believe. But if she didn't have to pay in, I don't know off the top of my head what the way they work that.
So you think I could do the complaint myself if I go down to the law library or something?
Yeah, you can do it. It's not that complicated, but you need to state who the parties are, what the debt's for, why it's owed, what the breach was, blah, 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 and then ask for your wherefore clause. You say, wherefore I want my money, and state it with particularity.
One quick question, buddy. If I go down and fill that paperwork out for the complaint and I take it to the prothonotary, whatever it is, is she... are they going to tell me if everything's correct there, or
nope.
am I going to have to wait?
They're not going to tell you if it's correct at all or not. A judge will do that later, and sometimes to your detriment.
That's what I'm
Got to go to break, brother. 540-0580. Welcome back, 540-0580. Well, Mr. Drew Deo, how are you?
Not too bad, Paul. How are you?
Good. For those guys who don't know, Drew's a lawyer in my office, practices in Carlisle, Lancaster, Chambersburg, Harrisburg, like the rest of us. What's new and exciting, Drew?
Oh, geez. Let me think. Well, I don't know. I missed last week's program. I don't know if you had a chance to talk about the Supreme Court matter that we have going right now.
I did mention that you and I teamed up to convince the Supreme Court to take on a technical issue regarding testing of BACs. And while the question itself is couched in terms of certificates of accuracy on breathalyzers, it would seem like it could apply to a lot of other testing on scientific instruments or testing instruments.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be one of the key issues, too, is how far do you extend it? Does it extend all the way to a radar gun in a speeding ticket case?
I hope so.
Yeah, I would hope so, too. It would make our job a lot easier.
Oh, no. Then what's the government going to do to make their money? If they can't,
well, that's true. That's the problem. That's what we're running into.
They can't stuff every poor guy with a speeding ticket.
Exactly.
Drew, can you hang around and answer some questions today?
Sure.
All right. 540-0580. Ken, you're on the air. Hey, Ken. Ken?
Oh, hello. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's going on, brother?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I got you. You're on the air.
First of all, I want to thank you for doing the show. I think it's an awesome show, and I think it's a great service to everyone that, to get some information out there, because so many people, taking advantage of. Obviously, I'm sure you know that in your business. But this is a simple question. I hope it's not a stupid one. But if a person, marriage happens and the one spouse is the only person on the mortgage
right.
previous to the marriage, and an unfortunate event were to happen, and the other spouse's name wasn't on the mortgage, would they automatically take over the payments of that? How does that work?
Okay, let's just start for some precepts here. Let's assume a couple's getting married and they haven't bought a house yet, right?
Okay.
When they buy the house, it doesn't matter how they title it, who's on the mortgage, who's not on the mortgage. Everything in it's probably going to be marital property. In other words, a house bought during the marriage out of marital funds is going to belong to both people, okay?
Okay.
And the mortgage is going to belong to both people. The interesting question is when a divorce happens, you can't make the bank divide up the property or the mortgage. In other words, the bank says, hey, they both owe us. So if only one's on it, vis-a-vis the bank, the person who's on the mortgage is going to continue to have to pay, and it's going to be their credit rating at risk.
Okay.
A court could later order a transfer of the property, but then the other party's going to have to be able to satisfy the mortgage or otherwise get the bank to change the mortgage over to them. Usually refinance is the vehicle that finishes that off. Is that kind of helping you?
Okay. Now, what if, previous to the marriage, the one spouse already owned the home, and, the other spouse moves into the home after the marriage, and the one spouse doesn't have their name added to the mortgage,
right?
And the one spouse passed away? What would happen then?
Well, which spouse passed away? The one with the mortgage or the one without the mortgage?
The one with the mortgage.
Well, then their estate becomes responsible for the mortgage.
Okay, so that would all come into wills and everything else?
Basically, yes. Although because you weren't on the deed and therefore it's going to have to pass through the will or it's going to have to pass through intestacy. But presumptively, the spouse gets everything if there's no will. And even if the will tries to write the spouse out, they can take against it. So presumably that house would go to the spouse. Again, the bank, on the other hand, may say, well, that's fine, but we're not going to change the mortgage over. We want our mortgage satisfied. So either sell the house and satisfy our mortgage or refinance.
Okay, so obviously the best thing to do would be to get both names on the mortgage then.
Well, it doesn't hurt. No, it doesn't hurt.
Okay.
But, if you're looking at doing that, then you might also want to look at what your interest rate is right now and whether a refinance makes sense for you or not as well. Because a lot of times going to the bank and asking to add somebody to the mortgage, the bank may say yes, they may say no, but a refi will allow you to do it whichever way you want.
Okay, so if the one person wasn't on the will, or the one person, there was no will, and the person that was on the mortgage passed away, you would say that the other spouse would automatically take over the mortgage as long as the bank might do what?
Well, if everybody's on the mortgage together and the deed's held together, generally they're going to accept whoever's stuck paying the bills, so to speak, at the end. But if one spouse is on the mortgage and the other spouse dies, that creates an issue because the property really belongs to the estate at that point.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, thank you.
540-0580. Did you follow all that, Drew?
Oh, I did. And I was thinking of situations we run into a lot, and a lot of times, I think parties are left, sometimes where the spouse that's a little more well off moves out, the other spouse wants to stay in the home and can't afford it. You're in a tough situation there, and especially if the other spouse either is not on the mortgage or doesn't care about their credit. We run into those situations all the time.
The funny thing at the beginning of that, he says something unfortunate happens. I thought he meant divorce, but then later I figured out he meant death.
Right.
Bill, you're on with Carl and Drew.
Hello.
Hey, Bill.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. Hey, I hear you on Bob Durgan show all the time, and I like listening to you guys. Kind of complicated here. I have several handguns that at least 20 years ago my stepfather acquired from some of his family members, and he lives in New Jersey. I live in Pennsylvania, and he acquired them in Pennsylvania, and he asked me to store them for him, and I've been storing them for all these years. Number one, am I opening myself up to any kind of legal problems just storing somebody else's handguns? And number two, how do I take possession of those? He's 90 years old, and he's never going to take them back because my mother seems to think he's a danger to himself.
Right. Well, in Pennsylvania, you can give handguns from parent to child.
Even step-parent?
And that's, I was going to get there. I was going to say, I'm not positive on that.
Okay, that's why I said it's kind of complex.
And that is an interesting question. Now, hopefully one of our gun people out there listening can, off the top of their head, without me having to look this up, tell us if a step-parent counts.
Mm-hmm.
It would seem like it should. I mean, if I've been your step-parent since you were 2, I mean, why can't I give you my gun as if you were my own son? But what do I know? A lot of people make very big distinguishing differences between stepchildren, and the law sometimes does as well.
Another part to that question is, what am I opening myself up to if I'm transporting them, Sage?
Oh, I wouldn't transport them into New Jersey, that's for sure.
No, I don't even go to New Jersey. Those people don't get a dime of my tourist money.
The only thing they're good for is cheap gas, really.
Yeah, right.
Which really is ironic, isn't it, that you have to pay somebody to pump it over there, but it's still cheaper? Thank you, Pennsylvania.
The refineries are all over there. That's the main reason. But, I mean, I drive tractor-trailer for a living. I don't want to talk about fuel prices. I'm fed up with that.
You're distraught enough.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, the answer is I believe you can hold somebody else's gun for them if it's bona fide, okay? And the fact that he told you he's going to come pick them up and just never did, I don't think you've done anything criminal at that point.
Right. Should I have him sign a letter just stating that he's having me store them? Yeah,
and that he's intending to come get them. Probably not a bad idea. But the other flip side is you don't really. I mean, obviously, you don't really need the letter per se. I think the burden of proof is still on the government.
Yeah, but I don't have money to even hire you to, defend myself.
Right. Well, I understand that. And the other answer on that is I would. It's a tree in the forest thing here. I just wouldn't advertise these things.
Well, I guess I just did.
Well, not really.
Okay.
All right, brother.
Have a good.
Got to go to break. Welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. I got Drew Deo of my office joining me. Sometimes if you guys call in and you want to talk to me, you can also talk to Drew. Drew, you're always available, right?
Always.
Yeah, of course, you're going to be what?
Past Monday, Tuesday, I had that 2-day bird flu. I don't know if it was the bird flu, but that's what people have been calling it. It'll knock you out for 2 days. You don't want it.
Yeah, I think I had it for 13 minutes.
For 13 minutes?
13 minutes. I have a constitution of a I don't know what, a minotaur or something, and I actually I probably did the smart thing, and as soon as I felt that the virus was grasping at me, I hit it with whiskey and washed it away.
And that's sometimes the only way to get to it early.
You got to get to it early, and you got to hit it with whiskey. A lot of people don't realize this, and I'm not talking about the cheap whiskey. Don't drink the Jim Beam or the Jack Daniels. You need to go right for the 100 proof, 120 proof, because otherwise it's not going to have the medicinal effect.
Right.
Anyhow.
Numb it.
No, not numbing it. It cures it. Gene, you're on the air with Carl and Drew. Gene.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I was just thinking about the whiskey. My dad always taught me how to take a hot toddy when I was feeling sick. But
it works.
Oh, absolutely. Got a small problem. But it's a 3-part problem. My daughter just graduated from college and up in State College, and she ran up some parking tickets that were billed to me eventually, not until after she left town. Because I own the car, but the car is no longer. It's been totaled in an accident, and I got a letter from a constable saying that he issued a warrant for my arrest.
Huh?
Is that such a thing, or?
I guess for unpaid parking fines, they're going to try to arrest you. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm stopped by state police, can he?
Theoretically, there'd be a warrant in the system. I doubt the state police are going to do it, but you know what? I've heard some horror stories.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, generally, I don't, but could they? Yeah, technically they could.
I had a guy one time. This story goes basically like this. It's a Thursday. I'm sorry, it's a Wednesday. It's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. It's 10 o'clock at night. He gets pulled over. He gets some police officer, says you got $300 parking fine warrant here. I'm going to take you down to the jail. You're going to need to get the $300 and pay it. Kid can't get a hold of anybody. Next thing you know, he's spending the night in jail. The next day it's Thanksgiving, and his family's wondering why he's not at Thanksgiving dinner. His mother thinks he might be dead, blah, blah, blah. And all he was trying to find $300 or somebody to release him. And, of course, most judges would have released him, but being a Thanksgiving holiday, they're having trouble, locating the on-call judge or some such thing. So the poor guy missed Thanksgiving dinner over him.
Wow. Okay, that's scary.
Now, how much are we talking about dollar-wise here?
Probably about $150.
Yeah. Yeah, I would pay it, and then I would beat my daughter up until she paid it back.
Okay. Well, one other thing, I've read something in the last 6 months about some being overturned because they weren't processed or within the 30-day period.
Yeah, and you may be able to do that. The question would be, how are you got to go up to state college and fight it, right?
Probably, yes.
Yeah, and judging, the last caller was lamenting about gas price as well. Having to drive back and forth to state college myself, I can tell you it's not the cheapest trip in the world, at least from this area.
Right.
So it's almost diminishing returns. And if they make you go back twice, then you probably come out ahead just to send in the money.
Yeah.
You put it in good perspective there. So.
Yeah, Gene, here's the answer. Then we just talked about this a little earlier today. It's one of these deals where they come up with this stuff, and it's just cheap enough, right? It's just cheap enough that you can't fight it, at least legitimately. So earlier when I was saying that everybody should fight their traffic tickets, or I was saying everybody should stop speeding, but another theory I've had is everybody should fight their traffic tickets for a week. I mean, if every person who got a traffic ticket in a week, no matter how minor, simply said, I want a hearing, once again, you could grind the entire court system to a halt. How much fun would that be, right?
Right.
But realistically, okay, I have a court hearing, now I have to get a babysitter for my kid. I have a court hearing, so now I have to miss work. Mm-hmm. Well, if it's over $800, I'm going to get the babysitter. I'm going to miss the darn work. But when it's $87.50 plus another $25 add-on, blah, 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 and it comes up to $123, it seems really hard to take an entire afternoon off or hire a babysitter or do whatever and risk getting in trouble with my boss when I could just send in $127. And that's the trick. That's the dirty secret. They keep it just low enough that you can't really justify fighting it most of the time.
Right. Exactly. And a lot of times, too, they'll, give you a break right on the road. So you're not as concerned about points and things like that. Then you're sort of left with just the fine as you're driving off.
Right.
Probably 9 times out of 10 people just pay it.
Now, yeah, and of course, Gene's problem is at this point, his parking tickets, he's not getting any relief from those because they're long gone and done.
Right.
All right, man.
Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Enjoy your hot toddies. 540-0580. Mike, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl, how you doing?
Good.
Good. Real quick, I know you're running up against the clock, but a few months ago, my wife was rear-ended while she was stopped. Very minor damage. Got one estimate, $800. The other one was $318. The guy was very grateful. Well, here's my insurance company, blah, blah, blah. Give me a call. We call him and say, look, we got one estimate, try to do the best thing for you. No good deed goes unpunished. The $300, okay, I'll get a check out to you. Thanks for not calling my insurance company. Of course, he didn't do it. Then we contacted his insurance company. They said, well, we'll contact him, et cetera, get his viewpoint. A month later, well, we can't reach him. I said, did you send a certified letter and say that there's money order enclosed? Maybe he'd sign for it. No, we don't do that. This is, I don't want to name the company, but they have like a little green rat. And, well, I guess some people call it a rat. Well, anyway, Make a long story short, they said, I said, well, what happens? And they said, well, everybody loses. I said, well, you don't lose. All you have to do is tell your customer not to answer the phone or not to answer a letter. So you can make millions that way. And I said, well, I'm going to contact the insurance department. They said, well, they didn't violate any statute. Now, my question is, look, I paid the $318. It's not a big deal. Can certainly afford it. But I'm thinking I want to inconvenience them. If I take them to small claims court, would they have to come up in this jurisdiction where it happened?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes, they will.
Beautiful. Because I'm looking at it, that's a multi-million-dollar racket. All they have to do is say, hey, you don't really have to, I doubt they do it, but, you know, some companies could do that and say, well, look, we can't reach our customer. We know it was his fault. He admitted it, but we can't reach him. What they did, they said they dropped him because they couldn't reach him.
Right.
So, I mean, technically, for $300 and some, it's just the principle of the thing. I want to tweak them a little bit. Do you feel like you go to district justice for the small claims form?
Yep. Fill it out and file it.
Okay. Well, you think I'm foolish doing it?
No, why not?
Okay.
It's not costing you anything, right?
No, I mean, you know what? I told them in the beginning, I said, it's such a small amount. Why don't you just pay it? You're a big company with that little green rat, you know? And, yeah, they didn't see the humor in it. But, you know, that's what I'm going to do. So I appreciate you validating it. Thank you.
All right, go get them.
We got it.
540-0580. We're going to be back in the next hour. We're going to be answering your legal questions for an entire hour here. In the meantime, go to romingerlaw.com if you want to look us up, get the phone number, get the email, check out Drew's biography, check out my biography, see what we've been up to.
I'm
Drew,
jumping for joy in mine.
Can you hang for a little while, Drew?
Yeah.
All right, hang with me through the break here. Go to romingerlaw.com, or the phone number is 241-6070, 241-6070. See you guys after the break.